The desert wind carried the smell of gunpowder long before the echo of hooves reached the border. Cole Hartley kept his head low, the brim of his hat slicing the moonlight. A leather satchel heavy with stolen gold clinked against his saddle horn. Every muscle in his body throbbed from the chase. 2 days of relentless pursuit by men who once called him brother. The stars above were cold and sharp, and the river that marked the Mexican line whispered like a dark invitation. He had crossed lines before, laws, loyalties, promises, but never one that cut this deep. The memory of Evelyn's voice still clung to him, low and fierce the night he left. "You think running will quiet what's inside you?" He had kissed her without an answer, leaving the taste of regret between them. That was a year ago, before the bank job turned bloody and his best friend bled out in the dust. Cole dismounted at the river's edge. The water shimmered silver under the moon. Behind him, the desert stretched like an empty confession. He should feel triumph, gold enough to vanish, to start clean somewhere the law had no name. But all he felt was the familiar ache of something lost long before the theft. A distant shot cracked the night. He spun, Colt drawn, only a lone coyote on the ridge. Yet unease slid through him, the old scar on his shoulder tightening like a warning. He waded in, boots filling with icy water, the satchel a dead weight. Halfway across he heard it. Another sound, not wind, not water. A rider approaching fast. Cole stilled, heart hammering. "Cole Hartley." A voice cut through the darkness, ragged with urgency. The name froze him. No lawman would call that way. No outlaw would dare. A horse splashed into the shallows behind him, and a figure reined in hard. Moonlight struck a familiar face beneath a travel-worn hat. Ben McCade, the only partner he'd ever trusted. But Ben had died in the Mesa Canyon ambush. Cole had buried him with his own hands. "You're supposed to be..." Cole's voice cracked like dry timber. Ben leaned forward, eyes fever-bright. "No time, it's Evelyn. They've taken her. If you still care, you'd best ride back before sunrise." The desert went silent except for the rush of the river. Cole's throat tightened, the gold suddenly heavier than stone. She's in Dry Creek," Ben said, breathless. "Reckoners found out you cared for her. They're using her. Tonight." Cole felt the old wound of guilt split wider, the weight of every mistake pressing down. The river hissed around his boots, cold and merciless. Ben's gaze held his, fierce and pleading. "Leave the damn gold if you have to. She won't see another dawn if you don't." Cole looked back at the dark horizon of Mexico. Freedom, safety, the life he'd chased. Then at the path he'd abandoned. A woman with fire in her eyes and a promise he'd never kept. The satchel strap bit into his shoulder. He loosened it, the clinking inside like a death knell. Above, the stars seemed to flicker closer, as if waiting for his answer. Cole turned toward the north wind, jaw set, the river swallowing the shine of gold behind him. Dawn broke in pale streaks of rose and gray as Cole rode hard across the scrubland, every hoofbeat drumming against the ache in his chest. The night's chill still clung to his coat. Dew turned the sagebrush silver. He had left the gold buried in the riverbank mud, a silent betrayal of the escape he once dreamed of. Dry Creek lay 50 miles ahead, and with each mile his thoughts returned to Evelyn, her quiet defiance, the way she had once traced the scar across his shoulder with trembling fingers. She had lost a brother in the border wars. He had lost a father to a noose. 2 souls marked by absence, drawn together like flint and steel and just as quick to spark. He had walked away from that fire a year ago, convinced it would burn them both. A hawk's cry split the morning. Cole tightened his grip on the reins. Ben rode beside him, his gaunt face half hidden beneath the brim of his hat. Cole wanted to ask how a dead man rode again, but the desert silence between them felt too brittle for questions. Instead, he said, "Why Evelyn?" His voice was rough as gravel. "The reckoners reckon you'll come back for her," Ben replied, his words as spare as the land itself. "They want what you stole." "I don't have it anymore." Cole tasted the lie like copper. Ben's eyes cut to him, sharp as a blade. "Gold or not, they think you do, and they'll spill her blood to find it." The sun climbed higher, heat rolling off the sand like an unseen tide. By noon they reached a ridge that looked down upon Dry Creek, a scatter of wooden roofs and one lonely church steeple. Smoke drifted from the blacksmith's forge, carrying the bitter tang of scorched iron. Cole's chest tightened. Evelyn's boarding house sat at the town's far edge, its porch swing swaying in the wind. But the street was too quiet. No children's laughter, no shopkeepers' calls. Even the horses tied outside the saloon stood restless, stamping at the dust. Ben drew his rifle, eyes narrowing. They're here, Cole dismounted, boots sinking into the dry earth. He could hear the slow creak of a signboard and, faintly, the hush of someone weeping. He moved toward the sound, every sense sharpened, the smell of oil and dust, the weight of the Colt at his hip, the way the sun turned every shadow into a threat. A sudden shout shattered the stillness. From the boarding house porch, a man stepped forward, broad-shouldered with a black bandana masking his face. The reckoner emblem, a snake swallowing its tail, was stitched on his vest. Behind him, through the doorway, Cole glimpsed a flash of auburn hair. Evelyn. Her wrists were bound, her eyes fierce despite the bruises darkening her cheek. She met Cole's gaze across the distance, and for a heartbeat the years of silence between them vanished. The bandanaed man raised his rifle. Hartley. His voice was a cruel sneer. Come claim what's yours, or we end her right here. Cole felt the desert sun sear the back of his neck. Ben shifted beside him, the barrel of his rifle catching the light. Cole's pulse thundered. He had no gold to trade, no plan beyond the pounding of his heart. Only the weight of old regrets and the woman whose life now balanced on the edge of a trigger. The man cocked the rifle, the sound like a dry branch snapping. Cole stepped forward, hand hovering near his holster. The street held its breath. Heat shimmered off the dusty boards, and the smell of horse sweat and gun oil hung thick as a storm cloud. Cole's hand hovered inches above the worn grip of his Colt, every muscle drawn taut as a bowstring. The reckoner with the bandana tilted his head, mocking. Thought you'd keep running, Hartley. But love, he jerked the rifle toward Evelyn, makes a man stupid. Evelyn stood stiff and silent, her bound wrists trembling only once before she steadied them. The bruise on her cheek bloomed purple beneath the late afternoon sun. Her eyes, clear and unflinching, met Cole's across the distance. They carried the same quiet challenge she'd given him the night he left. Don't run from what you can't outride. Cole's throat tightened. He remembered the blood on his best friend's shirt, the sound of the noose snapping around his father's neck. Loss had carved him hollow, taught him to run before grief could catch him. But now grief had a name, and it was Evelyn. Let her go, Cole said, his voice low, steady. The outlaw's laugh was harsh, brittle. Where's the gold? I left it, Cole said. It ain't worth her life. The reckoner's eyes narrowed. Liar! Ben stepped forward, rifle raised. He speaks truth. His voice carried an eerie calm. Take me instead. For the first time, the outlaw faltered. His gaze flicked from Ben to Cole, confusion shadowing his scowl. He began. Cole seized the instant. His Colt flashed from the holster in a single, fluid motion. The shot cracked the air like a whip. The outlaw's rifle tumbled, a smoking hole in its barrel. He staggered back, stunned. Ben moved like a phantom, no hesitation, no sound. He grabbed the outlaw's shoulder and drove him to the ground. Dust swirled in the sudden chaos, and from within it came a single echoing gunshot. Silence followed, heavy as the desert dusk. Cole lowered his pistol. The reckoner lay face down, motionless. Ben stood over him, rifle smoking. But as the dust thinned, Ben's outline seemed to waver, light passing through shadow. Cole blinked. Ben? His old friend met his eyes, a tired smile softening the hard lines of his face. She's safe now, Ben said quietly. You know what to do next, and then he was gone. No sound of boots retreating, no swirl of air. Only the long whistle of the evening wind. Cole's heart hammered. He turned toward the porch. Evelyn stood free, her ropes cut, though neither of them had moved to do it. She stepped down slowly, her eyes searching his face. You came back, she whispered. He holstered the Colt, the weight of it suddenly light, couldn't do anything else. For a moment they simply stood there, the sun sliding low, turning the town's empty windows to mirrors of gold. Dust settled like a quiet blessing. Evelyn reached up, touching the old scar on his shoulder. You always run from pain, she said softly, but you came back for me. Cole covered her hand with his, rough palm against her trembling fingers. I was done running, he said. Behind them, the sky deepened to the color of embers. Somewhere a coyote cried, a lonely hymn to the dying day. Cole drew Evelyn close, the scent of her hair, wild sage and smoke anchoring him to the moment. The gold was gone, the past unchangeable. But in the hush of Dry Creek, with Evelyn's heartbeat steady against his chest, He felt something he hadn't known in years. Not triumph. Not escape home.